Namaste. I'd like to welcome you to my heart, to the temple of Kriya Yoga this afternoon, to the meditation for the Sangha of Swami Pranananda. Today I'd like to talk to you, to meditate with you on the idea of awakening to the memory of your distant past. And in it, I had mentioned that I would talk about Goswami Kriyananda, who was asking a question: if we remember that we are truly descendants of the Atlanteans, what guarantee do we have that we will not wind up as the Atlanteans wound up? And it said, today I will meditate with you on a solution to this problem. I think to start the meditation, what I would say is that the most important way to remember our past, to connect with our past, the key method or the key technique is to want to remember. And that's very important. There has to be the desire, the want to remember the past. Second, you have to be able to work on and control your fears, your hatreds, your jealousies, angers, and so on. The lower three chakras. Get control of the negative parts of the lower three chakras. Included in that is you have to learn to control your biases and prejudices. And if I use one word to summarize what I'm saying, to make a short summary, it's to clear away the ignorance that exists within us. And we're trying to go back and look into the past. And in looking at the past, come up with an awareness, a realization of how we got where we are today. If you want to know where you're at today, you look at your past. You look at who were you in the past. And there's a different way of defining the past. Yesterday was the past, and 20 years ago was the past. When you were born, that's the past, and you can go further into previous lives. And I guess that's what I was suggesting in this description that I gave for the meditation this afternoon, which is that we want to penetrate back into the distant past if we can, to try and understand what brought us to where we're at today. Now, if I go into my past, I started coming to the temple of Kriya Yoga in 1980. And when I came to the temple in 1980, I had a fairly decent job. I didn't have a family, and so I suppose that I had some freedom with how I spent my money. And so what I did was, when I went to the temple, I bought tapes. There were recordings. Pranananda, of course, when he would give his lectures and meditations, he would have them taped, and I would buy the tapes. And every week I would buy a tape or two tapes or a series of tapes. And it wound up over the years, the decades, the years, that I wound up getting a pretty good inventory of tapes from Kriyananda. And I would listen to the tapes and I would take notes. Of course, at that time I joined the temple and I became a disciple of Kriyananda. And so I also had the lectures and the meditations that he was giving. And for me, it was quite an experience because I was brought up in a Catholic background. I'm talking about the past, so I guess I can talk about my past as a childhood, including my childhood. If I go back then and I think about it, my parents were devout Catholics, and that was the environment that I was brought up in. It was kind of infused and surrounded with religion, religious ceremonies, prayers, praying, things like that. My parents prayed. They went to church. The family, we prayed as a family together on different occasions at different times. And so religion and God and all of these things were really a big part of my background, my upbringing when I was very young. I was an altar boy when I went to church, so I was involved in the church a lot in dealing with God and religion and things of that nature. And then I went to this wonderful, marvelous place called high school. And when I went to high school, I went to a Catholic parochial school. And when I went to high school, it was a public high school. When I went to the public high school, all of a sudden nobody's talking about God anymore. And that continued on until when I got into college. And I think even in college, it was less about God and anything related to religion and all of that. And it was all about the sciences and dealing with science and mathematics and English and things of that nature. It was all oriented towards earning a living, growing up, and things of that nature. But there was this kind of divergence away from religion and God. And then in the late 80s, in the late 70s, I was introduced to the temple. And then in 1980, I walked into the temple, got very interested in what Kriyananda was saying, because it was like going back to my childhood for me. He started talking about God. I hadn't heard about that in a long time. Talked about religion and things like that. And so, as I said, I bought a lot of tapes, and one of the set of tapes that I ran into when I was at the temple there was this series that was called Mysteries of Ancient Egypt. And I said, boy, that sounds interesting. I can't remember exactly what I was thinking at the time. I didn't know if I had an interest in Egypt because of what Kriyananda was saying, or whether there was some interest there for other reasons. My mind or my memory isn't that good or that clear about it. But anyway, I saw that and it captured my interest. I got to listen to this. And so I started listening to the tapes. And there were other tapes. So he had a tape on the cosmic history of the earth, or the cosmic history of the universe. I remember listening to that. And of course there were classes. I was in the astrology class, so I was listening to the tapes from the astrology class. And I would go home and I would take notes, a lot of notes. That was the early 80s. it's a meditation, right? So I can reminisce a little bit. And I remember back in the 1980s, when I first started coming to the temple, I would actually take notes by hand. And so I would write out word for word what Kriyananda was saying in the lecture. I was very interested. I have a strong Uranus in my chart, so I tend to go to extremes. So I would take the tape and I would write them out. And then a few years, it was a matter of a year or two later, they had this wonderful invention called the Apple computer. And the Apple computer had a word processor on it. And so I would take the tapes home and I would start typing the notes out and that. And so I took a lot of notes from there, and I just thought here's one of the books, these are the tapes, the stuff that I had typed out from the tapes from Kriyananda. It's a visual medium, so I had to show something other than me on the video. I thought, here's something to give you to look at instead of just to me and that. So anyway, I'm typing these out, and as I was doing that, there was, again, this Mysteries of Ancient Egypt, and I took a page, some of the notes that I took, and I want to read what he said. And I know you have a connection through Pranananda with the temple, and so some of you may be familiar with the series and the tapes and that, or you may not be familiar with that. I'm not sure, I don't know. But I guess I'll kind of assume that maybe you know about it, maybe you don't, or some of you do, some of you don't. Again, let me just read to you a paragraph of what he said in this tape. He said, there was a space war right on Earth, and basically the Confederation almost won, but the Empire won. And after the Confederation had successfully chased away the Empire used their ultimate weapon, which you may be familiar with. It is called the thought bomb. And so what he did was, by what we would probably call mental telepathy, or what they did, by what you would probably call mental telepathy, but which is not quite accurate. This is Kriyananda saying this. They sent in unison this tremendous thought bomb at the returning ships. And as the returning ships were coming back to the Earth, this thought bomb exploded in their midst. And the only thing that the thought bomb had in it was to forget everything. And Kriyananda said it is like taking a tape from a tape recorder and you run it through an electromagnetic device, and you take it out and you get a blank tape. And then he continued on, he says, but I tell you, and I tell you true, the thought bomb is dying, and within a matter of decades, we will remember our root, singular. But then, if we remember that we are truly the descendants of the Atlanteans, what guarantee do we have that we will not wind up as the Atlanteans wound up? Like I said, I have a strong Uranus. So I saw this and I said, wow, this is very interesting. And I remember this. I remember when I was reading it, listening to it, trying to digest exactly what he was saying. He's talking about a space war, and thought bombs and Atlantis and all sorts of things like that. And that was 1977 that he gave this meditation or this lecture. And then I got it in 1980 was when I heard it. And then in 1985, Pranananda, his guru, Sri Shelley Ji, came to the temple. And I remember that very well. Again, another stroll down memory lane for me. But I remember him coming to the temple. And he gave a series of lectures where it was question and answer type. The people would ask questions and he would answer the question. And then I remember it was a Saturday, it was July 20th, 1985. I remember it very well. And he gave a meditation, and the meditation was about the thought bomb. And again, a paragraph or a short phrase that Shelley said, "So we see that telepathy has a tremendous force field associated with it. This is why Yogananda says that the ultimate war weapon is a thought bomb." Now, Yogananda is Shelley's guru. The ultimate war weapon is a thought bomb. All you have to do is send out a tremendous hatred to somebody, and you are hitting them with the thought bomb. And remember, whatever you do to another, you do more so unto yourself, but at a different time and at a different place. Kriyananda's words kind of ringing in my ear as he would add to that, with interest. So whatever you do to another, you do more so unto yourself, but at a different time and at a different place. Because of these states of awareness which are going around your cerebral spinal system, he's completing the thought. This is a transmitter, this is an antenna. In other words, what he's saying is your spine, the spine that you have is a transmitter. And it's a receiver too. It's an antenna, your spinal column. And so that's what you do. You hate someone, you transmit that hate, and that hatred radiates from your spinal column into the universe. You love someone, that love is transmitted from your spinal column into the universe, and it radiates out. The spinal column is the mechanism that is an input and output of who and what you are and how you relate and connect with the universe. Kriyananda would say, I think he would say, so it's always dangerous to put words into your guru's mouth. I think he would say that, I have to hedge my bets. He would say that if the guru says something to you, in a guru-disciple type of relationship, if your guru says something to you, your ears should go up and you should perk up and listen. Again, a disciple-guru type of relationship. And you need to listen carefully to what the guru says. If your guru says to you something 2 times or 3 times, you pay very close attention and you listen very closely to what the guru is saying. And you pay very close attention to the words that the guru is saying. If the guru says something over and over again, repeatedly, it's important. Kriyananda gave this lecture in 1977. In 1980, I went there and he was talking about the concepts here that we're talking about in 1980. His guru in 1985 came to Chicago and he was talking about these concepts. And again, let me go back to the beginning where I started from, where I said there's two things that were important. The first thing is that we must want to remember. But the second thing I said is we need to get control of our hatreds, our fears, our jealousies, and all of that. So I'm kind of going back to the beginning and then continuing on. But the key point, the essence of what I'm meditating with you on today is this idea of getting control of those lower emotions, those emotions that are in the lower spinal column, the Mars chakra, Jupiter chakra, Saturn chakra, anger, jealousy, fear, hatred, especially fear. Fear is so insidious. When we're driven by fear, we do things that we say we would never have done. Our fears cause us or drive us to do things that really aren't very nice. And so that kind of this fear thing is kind of wrapped up in all three of these lower chakras of the Saturn, which has to do with the hatred and the Jupiter jealousy, the Mars, the anger, and all of that. And again, the message, if there's a message for the meditation this afternoon that I'm trying to get across, is that we need to get control of those lower emotions. So I go back to this. Kriyananda said, Kriyananda said it. Kriyananda's guru is talking about this thought bomb, and Shelley, his guru, mentions Yogananda in this, and he says this is why Yogananda says the ultimate war weapon is a thought bomb. So if your guru says something 3 times, and he's saying you really need to listen, here is something that's being talked about repeatedly over almost a decade. Probably was more than a decade. It says to me, or it said to me, there's something important in the message, very important in the message. It's so important that I thought, well, here we are, let's see, that was 77, 70, 87, 90, 77, 87, 97, 107, 117, 120, that's 50 years, so 40 years, 45 years ago? And it's still with me, and so I'm bringing it up again and reintroducing it because I believe it's an important idea, important concept, and something that needs to be communicated and not forgotten about. We need to remember. Going along with this idea of remembering, it's important to remember the past, and it's important to remember your past. It's important to remember the past of the earth, the past of this planet, of this solar system. But it's important to remember your past also. And to give an example of why I think it's important, when Pranananda gave this lecture, it was in 1977, and it was August of 1977. And he said, there was a space war on Earth. Well, a space war, holy cow, what's that all about? On the Earth? And basically the Confederation almost won, but the Empire won. If you hear that today, you get a certain idea or picture in your mind. But what you have to do is you have to go back into the past, because the context is everything. The context is very important. And it just so happened that in August of 1977, there was a major event that occurred. And you know what that major event that occurred was? In May of 1977, Star Wars came out. I don't know if you know the film. If you saw the film, I guess I'll assume everybody saw the film, the Star Wars film. And in the Star Wars film, you had the Empire. In fact, I think one of the sequels was The Empire Strikes Back. So he had talked about the Empire. And they were fighting against the Confederation. So the reason I'm saying that is, I'm trying to read the mind of the guru, or I'm assuming that when Kriyananda was talking about it, kind of the impetus of it was because of this film that had come out. And I do know that Kriyananda does pay attention to what the films are, what the movie industry is doing, and what is being produced by the movie industry. And that's important because the movie industry is in the business of communicating and communications. And so the movie industry communicates ideas and thoughts and things that are happening within the society and what's happening in the world at that time. And so what this is saying is, or what I'm saying or suggesting is that, there's a context to what Kriyananda was talking about. And he's talking about the empire and this battle, this war that was going on, and this idea that a thought bomb is thrown, and the thought bomb was to forget. But the thing is, when he was talking about this was a series on ancient Egypt. And so what he's saying is that when this was happening, or when it was happening, was conceptually at the time of ancient Egypt that he was talking about. Now, if you go even further into it, actually what he was relating to was Plato. And Plato had written what they were called dialogues. He was a philosopher, scientist of sorts, and he wrote materials that were religious oriented, philosophically oriented. He was a philosopher, and they were historical, and they were dialogues. And so they were written where one person would talk as though Plato was talking to the person. And one of the dialogues was the Critias. And in the Critias, Plato mentions in the conversation, Critias was a Greek. Plato was a Greek, and so he's having this conversation. While he's having this conversation, he says, "Oh, by the way, there was this continent and this society that existed that was called the Atlanteans, and the Atlanteans were a very, very proud, very great, and very advanced civilization." And in the dialogue, he's talking about it, and I guess maybe just for a little more depth to it, I don't want to get too technical. I want to try and keep it meditative, but the words that he's talking about were coming actually from a Egyptian priest. His name was Solon. And so this Egyptian priest, Solon, it was talking to Plato's grandfather. And Plato's grandfather is relating this to Plato, and Plato's writing it down in his dialogues. And he says that there was a great empire and a wonderful empire. It was Atlantis. And he said, paraphrasing, but essentially the Atlanteans had devolved using black magic. That's not Plato saying that. I'm adding a little bit to it, but he's saying that this country had devolved to a point where it went to war actually against the gods. And there was this war even against the gods. And the gods became so angry that in a single day, in a single night, the continent was destroyed and the people and the land were destroyed. And he says it was like, symbolically, they say 64 million inhabitants there were destroyed. And so Plato has given this to us, and what he was saying was that this actually goes back when this happened. He places the date at around 9400 BC. So that's roughly 11,500 years ago. In terms of the context of thinking of time and time of the earth and lifespan of the earth and lifespan of the solar system and things like that, 10,000 years ago 11,000 years ago is nothing. It's a blink of an eye. It's the recent past for us. But what we're trying to do is penetrate back into the past and find out what happened. What was it that the Atlantean did that caused this to happen, to cause this great destruction? I think it's interesting that it says in this, he points out very specifically that it was a single day and a single night. And so whatever it is that happened, it was very catastrophic. And Pranananda talked about it, and there's other people that over the millennia have come and talked about it because of Plato. The reason I bring this up is because that's the only information, physical information, that we have about Atlantis. Now, I'm assuming everybody here knows about Atlantis, they've seen it. The media, the news, you go to the news media, movies, and there's always, every once in a while, a movie will come about Atlantis or something like that. I haven't seen anything recently, but I remember a few decades ago they had even television series about it. And so there was a lot of talk about it. There was a lot of information about it. There was actually a United States Senator Donnelly, who wrote a book about Atlantis. There's other mystics that have come along that have talked about it. Blavatsky talked about Atlantis a lot. And there were other mystical people or mystically oriented people that have talked about it. The reason I'm saying all of this is because what's kind of funny about it is that all of this is based on Plato and his dialogue in the Critias, in this passage, which was in the dialogue, and he talked about other things in the Critias. Atlantis was just one of them things, but from that one, that's the only evidence that we have that Atlantis existed and is a continent. What's funny about it is I come forward to today, and for me, with all the information that I've gotten and all the information that I've been exposed with about Atlantis and about this, I actually reached a point, which is kind of interesting for me, where I just accept that it's true. I don't question it at all. In my mind, it's not a myth. But if you go to science, what I should say is you go to the traditional sciences, the established sciences, they say that the story is a myth, that there's really nothing to it, it's just somebody's imagination. I'm on the other side of the fence with that. I actually believe that it's true, that it existed. So then the question is, what was their cause? What was the cause of the demise? And again, I'm back to the beginning where I started was, if you listen to people that talk about it, if you listen to the minds, the mystical minds, and people talk about, they go back to, if I could use a word to summarize it, I would use the word that Shelley used. They became victims of the hatred that they were feeling. They became victims of the jealousies that they were feeling. They became victims of the hatreds that they were feeling within them. They dropped down into the lower chakras, and that's where they went wrong. That's where they lived their lives. And I do have to clarify something here that's important. It's really very important. I talk about them as though it's like this monolithic type of culture, and that's not true. It's like our culture, it isn't a monolith. Nobody's thinking the same thing. So you have groups of people, and there's people that have certain beliefs. There's other people that, Atlantis was the same way. There was groups of people there that were very spiritually evolved, and there were groups of people that were not so spiritually evolved. And so that's, I think, very important to keep in mind whenever you deal with any of these concepts that we talk about hatred and jealousy and anything that I'm talking about today. And how we need to get control of it. It's not everybody that's falling prey to, or falling victim, being victimized by these emotions, and that cause us to, degrade ourselves. Again, as Shelley says, when we feel these things, we feel them at the core of our being, along our spinal column, and they become a part of us, the part of our nature, and they carry us from one life into another lifetime, or even within the lifetime from our early childhood into our later years. When I talk about controlling it, part of the control process is being aware that it's there. And so that's, again, the focus of where my conversation or the meditation is this afternoon is, my suggestion is, in dealing with the concepts that I've been talking about, which really amounts to the concept of this thought bomb, which had something to do with the destruction of Atlantis, which was a major catastrophe. And it was because the peoples of the worlds had lost control of the lower emotions. So if we're going to solve the problem and move forward, the way you control the emotions, the way you solve the problem, the way you move forward is by replacing those lower three emotions with the upper three emotions, or those force fields. The love, the hatred, the anger, the jealousy, you replace them with love, with compassion, with understanding. And so that's really the answer to the mystery. if we don't want to wind up as the Atlanteans wound up, if we don't want to wind up as a lot of our ancestors have wound up with the wars and things of that nature, what we do is we control the lower emotions by focusing and working on the what I would call the higher emotions, the higher intellectual parts. Those parts being, again, the love and the compassion and the understanding. And when you do this, you do it on a daily basis. Every day, when you interact with people, you find that in these interactions, you have normal, just everyday conversations, everyday ideas and thoughts being communicated back and forth. But in the communications, as with all communications and as with life, there's positives, things and ideas and things that come up that are communicated, and then there's negative things that are communicated. And what you want to do is use the higher things, the concept of understanding and compassion, if I could pick a word that's most important. And if I could give you a word to take away from the meditation this afternoon, that word would be compassion, is to learn to have compassion for everybody around you. If you learn to have compassion for everybody around you, guess what you do? That radiates out from you. It radiates out from your center of your spinal column, and it radiates within you. And you become compassion. You become compassionate. You become filled with compassion. You become filled with love, and you become filled with understanding. And when you do that, that's what radiates from your transmitter, from the spinal column. These higher emotions, or maybe higher feelings, would be a better way to say it. And as you do that, you move forward into the world and help to make sure that the mistakes of the past are not repeated. You work on, you do the best you can. You work with all the wisdom and energy of the mind energy you have to move forward and help other people. And as you do that, it radiates through your entire being, through who you are, and you become that person and help to make, saying it in maybe a simplistic way, but the world is a little better place. I remember in the early days I used to talk and meditate, and I would say, do you realize that if you go out and in your own little world, the world that you live in, your interactions with the people that you deal with, whether it's at home or at work or whatever it might be, as you deal with these people, if you make their lives better, you make your life better. If you deal with them compassionately and with love, that radiates from you, from the center of your being, that radiates out into the world, and it makes the world a little better. And what I used to say is, you make the world a little bit better, and nobody can stop it. Nobody can stop you. It just happens. If you make the world a little better, the world becomes a better place to live. It's logically very sound. Now, as you work on that, one of the techniques that is used in enhancing the compassion that you have within you, enhancing the love that you have within you, and enhancing the upper parts of your being, your awareness, your mind, the soul that you are, the being that you are, and enhancing that. One of the better ways of doing that, or better ways, the way of doing that is through prayer and working with prayers. And there's different kinds of prayers, but and at the temple we have a prayer group. And so what I'm suggesting to you is that I think it's a good idea to start to establish in your everyday life a practice of praying every day, to pray. And maybe a lot of you already do. Hopefully a lot of you already do. If not, it's, as they say, it's a good time to start. And as part of the prayer practice, you bring into your awareness your Ishtadevata. And Ishtadevata is your chosen form of deity. I guess I'm assuming that everybody here knows the concept of Ishtadevata. If you don't, it simply means chosen form of divinity, whoever you feel comfortable with as a form of God or a form of the divine. That's what your Ishtadevata is. For some people it could be Jesus, other people it could be the Buddha, for some people it could be Virgin Mary, it could be Krishna, Lakshmi, it actually could be a saint. You could pick a saint as your Ishtadevata. Something that's important about that is when you work with your Ishtadevata, something that I keep in my mind all the time, it constantly goes through my mind, is that the Ishtadevata is actually the doorway to what we call Ishwara. Ishwara is the supreme God, the supreme single God. When we say there is one God, we're talking about Ishwara in yoga. In Hinduism, it would be Ishwara. If you take the form of your Ishtadevata and you go past the form and you take a step past the form, the step past the form is Ishwara. It is the highest form of divinity that there is. It is the divine that exists and is transcendent above everything. And so, as a practice, what I suggest is that every day when you wake up, this is something that I do. I get up in the morning, and usually when I first start to wake up, the first thought I have is of my Ishtadevata. Not always, but frequently. It's because I'm trying to get to that point. When I go to bed at night, I'm saying to myself, I want to wake up. I want to be thinking about my Ishtadevata when I wake up. And then when I get out of bed, I go to my place of meditation where I meditate, and I'll sit down, and what I'm saying is the first thing I do in working with the Ishtadevata is I sit down and I invite my Ishtadevata into my home. I say, welcome. Please come and bless the home that I live in. And you can look at it on different levels, whether you want to say the home, the physical body, the home, the physical building, whatever it might be, or the home, this earth. You welcome your Ishtadevata into your the beginning of your day, and maybe even be bold enough to ask your Ishtadevata to stay with you during the day. A companion. I like to think of a little angel on your shoulder. When I was younger, that was the big thing. They say you had two angels on you, one bad angel and one good angel. Maybe switch the bad angel for a good angel and have two good angels on your shoulders. I joke with you a little bit, but invite the Ishtadevata into your home. And just a simple invitation. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or extravagant. You don't have to speak any foreign language like Sanskrit or something like that. Just do it in English or whatever language you want to choose. And you just say to your Ishtadevata, please come into my home and bless my home. That's it. Then you get up and you start your day, or in my case, I'll go into a meditation, or I'll get up and I'll prepare. I'll wash and maybe I do a few things to walk around. I do hatha yoga. I like to do hatha yoga in the morning, pretty much every morning, to get the body in good condition. And then I'll stop and I'll return and go back and prepare and do my meditation. The point I'm making is you invite the Ishta, you do your preparation for the day, and then you do the meditation as part, at least for me, it's part of my day. And each of us does it in our own way. So you prepare for your day the way that you have to. I know some people will do their meditation in the evening or in the afternoon, whatever that case might be. But what I'm saying or suggesting is the first thing to do is to invite the Ishtadevata into your home, into your heart, and to guide you, to guard you, and to protect you through the day. So we will do a short ritual to conclude the meditation, and it will be to invoke your Ishtadevata. So, and if you can come to a comfortable seated position or just a comfortable meditative position, you close your eyes, and after you close your eyes, you visualize your Ishtadevata. Again, it's your chosen form of deity. And as you visualize your Ishtadevata, visualize light, a white light radiating from the heart and from the mind, the Ajna chakra of your Ishtadevata, and the light is radiating out from your Ishta. And as this light radiates out, you realize that it is a light that is filled with truth, goodness, and divinity. And as the light radiates out, you cup your hands and visualize in your mind the light filling your hands. And with the light that's in your hands that are cupped, you pour that light over the feet of your Ishtadevata. And as you pour the light over the feet of your Ishta Devata, you're blessing your Ishta with the light and purifying the Ishta Devata. And then again, you take the light in your hands, your hands filled with the light, and you take that light and you pour it over your Ishta Devata, over the head of your Ishta Devata. And as the light is flowing through the Ishta Devata, realize that it represents your higher mind, the higher mind that you are, and you're blessing it with truth, goodness, and divinity. And then you cup your hands again, and visualize your hands filling with light, and then you take and pour that light over your head. And as you pour it over your head, the light is purifying, blessing you with truth, goodness, and divinity, each cell of your being, each petal of your mind, being blessed by the light from your Ishta Devata. And then, as you feel the blessing of the Ishta Devata, you lean slightly forward and you say in your mind to your Ishta Devata, how may I serve you? How may I serve all life forms? How may I serve you and all life forms? And a third time, you say, how may I serve you and serve all life forms? And then as you relax and release from the little blessing that you've done, you've blessed the world, you've blessed your Ishta Devata, and you've blessed yourself. You prostrate to the Ishta Devata and visualize yourself prostrating, and you say, I prostrate to saints and saviors of all religions, gurus and all teachers, and to you, Ishta. And with that, I'd like to conclude the meditation and thank each of you for joining in the meditation this afternoon. And hopefully it has meant something to you and given you something to think about and meditate on for the coming few days or few weeks, whatever. And I would just conclude by thanking you, each of you, for joining me in the meditation this afternoon. Namaste.